Good afternoon. Welcome back, everyone. Hope everyone had a chance to grab a bite to eat. Up next, I'm excited to kind of bring on stage multi-award winning young leader. She's the recipient of the 2022 Public Service Award of Excellence, and she'll be talking to us about data leadership. So everybody, please welcome Kenza.
Okay, now you can hear me. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Kenza Sallier, and I'm a unit head working for Statistics Canada. So I'm very happy and honored to be here to discuss a bit of leadership skills, a bit the scientific approach, and to provide a perspective as a young leader from Statistics Canada. So this is a bit the outline of the presentation today. First of all, the goal that I had today is a bit of an attempt of defining statistical leadership. What is it? What does it mean? Especially in the context of a governmental agency, so for the public sector. Then I thought it could be interesting to draw a bit of a comparison between the notions of leadership competencies and the scientific approach. And my goal here is a bit to explore the idea that there is no real debate between soft and hard skills. I remember when I was even a younger methodologist, I tend to think, I'm a very technical person. And when I started managing people, I had less experienced employees that would tell me, I'm very technical. I really like technical stuff. I don't really understand what are soft skills, what are leadership competencies. And the funny part for me was that the people that would tell me that would be people that were already demonstrating a lot of leadership competencies. So I feel like there's a bit of a disconnection in terms of understanding what leadership competencies are and what soft skills are. And I think that there's not an actual debate between those two, in the sense that both, leadership skills, the scientific approach, or soft and hard skills, contribute really to serve the pursuit of excellence, problem solving, decision making, and at the end of the day, organizational success. And I would like to finish the presentation to talk about the fact that leadership goes beyond executive roles. So it's about discussing the idea that one does not need to be an executive in order to demonstrate leadership. Leadership should be seen as a set of behaviors and influence rather than a position of authority. And before we start, a few words about me. First of all, as it was mentioned, I'm a young public servant in the sense that I only have 7 years of experience, and I'm not an executive. I do not have a background in management. I have a bachelor in mathematics, a master's in statistics, and I have only worked for Statistics Canada. So I do hope that my presentation today is not too much of a tunnel vision. Sorry if it's the case, I don't want to be too biased, but I hope that whatever I say today could be applied in your own teams and organizations. My first goal today is to offer a perspective from a young statistician. I think it can be interesting for more senior people to hear that, but also it's a bit of a goal of, representativity. As a statistician, I know that representativity is really important, and I want people that are less experienced to see that you don't have to be a super senior to be able to discuss about leadership, especially in the public sector. And my second goal is really to bridge the gap between high-level strategic vision and concrete understanding on how to implement this vision. And we know that this process can feel a bit abstract and challenging. And I like to have an analogy when I'm talking about that. It's really a bit like we take a complex real-world problem and we try to translate it into equations and logical statements like we do in mathematics. So we keep hearing about leadership. How can we present it in a more concrete way in order for younger statisticians, less experienced employees to better understand what it means on a daily basis? So first of all, let's start with a few definitions. At the end of the day, as I mentioned, the attempt will be to define a bit the notion of statistical leadership. So the notion of leadership is well defined within the Government of Canada. Treasury Board has established a framework around 6 competencies that have very clear definitions, a scale depending on the level you work at, and that provide also some practical examples to demonstrate those competencies in an effective way. So those are the 6 competencies, so create a vision, mobilize people, uphold integrity and respect, collaborate with partners, promote innovation and guide change, and achieve results. So if you don't work for the public sector, it might not be the same exact competencies, but in general, I would be very surprised if the competencies that you're familiar with are really different from those. For example, for the United Nations, it's very similar in terms of the 6 competencies. Now, if you think about technical skills, such as, for example, statistical expertise or data science knowledge, it's quite often easy to define. It's quite often easy to have a specific scale to evaluate those. For example, at Statistics Canada, we have various technical competencies that have been outlined in order to guide roles and responsibilities in statistical work. And the last thing that I would like to define today in order to start a bit more the presentation is statistics. What is it, right? Well, statistics here, the definition I'm going to use is the science of collecting, analyzing, presenting, and interpreting data. So the field has evolved primarily with the governmental needs, such as census data collection to better understand the population and the society. And now it extends across a variety of sectors that require the transformation of large amounts of data into meaningful information, which is the goal of the conference that we had for the past 2 days, right? And I see the role as a statistician or a data scientist, someone that is really working in the data field as a translator, right? It's like the translator job. You cannot just translate each word, like a sentence word by word. You need to translate it in a way that is actually understood by someone that is going to read the text. It's the same thing for statisticians or data scientists. It's really the idea of taking big data and structured whatever you want, and to transform it in something that is meaningful and relevant. And it's been interesting for me to realize that in past years, we have more and more heard the concept of statistical leadership, or data leadership, if you prefer. But what does it mean, really? And I think that before trying to define what it means, it's important to ask ourselves the question of why do we hear more and more about statistical leadership? And in my opinion, and I would like to hear from you if you have other opinions, that would be interesting. I think that with the data revolution and technology advancements, nearly anyone can use data to generate analysis and draw conclusions, right? Especially with open data and open software that are freely accessible, right? So in a world of flowing with information, while misinformation and fake news are becoming more and more prevalent. So it has become critical to ensure that data is not only used, but also interpreted responsibly and accurately. In other terms, if I was to summarize what I just said, access to data and tools is easy. Access to expertise and experience, it's a bit rarer. So, for example, we can all, do some very basic calculation on data, but quality indicators, trying to interpret without bias in a way that is relevant for anyone, this is where the expertise and the experience come in, and the notion of statistical leadership becomes more and more important, in my opinion. So defining statistical leadership, there was a very interesting panel discussion at the 2023 World Statistics Congress that took place in Ottawa with former or current chief statisticians or deputy ministers, if you prefer, of national statistical organizations around the world. So Statistics Canada around the world. But it was more about positioning NSOs on the national and international scene and coordination, which is in Canada granted by the Statistics Act to Statistics Canada. So it's not really, the presentation today is not really about positioning a team or an organization in an organizational context. It's more about trying to define statistical leadership for less experienced employees and try to see on a daily basis what it means concretely, basically. And if I was to define, it's a bit of an attempt to define the notion of statistical leadership in the context of a governmental agency, I think it can be defined as the strategic application of statistical expertise to inform decision-making, guide policy development, and drive organizational objectives. So it involves leveraging data and analytical methods to provide evidence-based insights that address public issues, optimize resource allocations, and enhance the effectiveness of programs and services. In other terms, statistical leaders play a crucial role in interpreting complex data, so trying to transform the information into something that is accessible and easily interpretable, ensuring the proper use of methods, and advocating for sound methodologies while fostering a culture of data-driven decision-making across the organization or the government in general. And of course, statistical leadership also covers the fact of guiding teams of statisticians or data scientists. A good way, I think, when I am to explain the notion of statistical leadership to someone that is new at Statistics Canada or in my team, is try to link the notion of statistical leadership to relevance. I just a bit covered the fact that now a bit everybody could become, in theory, a statistician and data scientist, in the sense that data is easily accessible, open source, it's easily accessible. So how do we make sure to keep being relevant, right? If anyone can do it, well, relevancy is now a question that needs to be raised, and I think that leadership is a way to ensure relevancy. So statistical leaders must ensure that the data they provide is timely, reliable, and directly applicable to current governmental priorities, such as economic forecasting, public health initiatives, or social equity. Actually, if we go back to the fundamental principles of official statistics as defined by the United Nations, it's the first principle, what I just said. And there are key ways that statistical leadership fosters relevancy. So addressing policy needs, adaptation to emerging challenges, engagement and communications, foresight and proactivity. So it's really about, if I was to summarize, ensuring that statistical practices meet the evolving needs of society. So leaders in this field must bridge the gap between data and policy, maintaining relevance through innovation, foresight, and strategic alignments with government priorities. In my opinion, it's still a bit broad and not concrete enough. And I thought in the past month about how can I really understand, less experienced employees about what is statistical leadership, and I realized that maybe if I was to approach that question using something that they know, such as the scientific approach, it could be a good way for them to better understand what it means, statistical leadership. So when I'm talking about the scientific approach, and that's why I have a bit that comparison exercise that is coming in the presentation between leadership competencies and scientific approach, I'm really talking about the process of objectively establishing facts through testing and experimentation. So the scientific approach is on the slides here, and it has several steps, right? It starts with the research question, something that needs to be addressed. The next step is to observe, so it means, for example, a literature review, what has been conducted already. Or it could be, for example, we see a trend, we see something that's happening, so we observe something in regards to the primary research question. Then we need to operationalize that research question, something that is tangible, in concrete activities that can be tested. And it's without any surprise that the next step is to test. So conduct an experimentation. As Statistics Canada is the fact of, for example, conducting a survey, right? Then we conduct the survey, we conduct the experimentation, we are able to collect the information that we need, and we can draw some conclusions. And after that, we share it. And I just want to talk about something that the Assistant Chief Statistician of the Strategic Data Management Methods and Analysis field at Statistics Canada raised in 2019. It's that when it comes to a scientific approach, we need to be better at communicating through all steps. So there's really a need to consult and communicate more widely and much earlier than after testing. It was a bit what was discussed at the panel yesterday morning. Carol, I think that's you that mentioned that, was the big win. We need to be better at communicating. So it goes back to that, right? So I'm really talking about what he called the enhanced scientific approach. So at first, the scientific approach and leadership competencies may seem to belong to different realms, right? One is more rooted in empirical research and systemic inquiry, and the other one in organizational leadership and people management. However, I truly believe that both share common ground in their emphasis on rational problem solving, evidence-based decision-making processes, and continuous improvement. And both also share the same goal of providing service of excellence. And by excellence, I mean the commitment to delivering the highest quality public service while respecting budgetary constraints, time limitations, and ethical and well-being imperatives of the human resources that are involved. I would like to quote a former chief statistician that we had at Statistics Canada that was defining the role of a methodologist or data scientist in 2024, methodologist, data scientist, statistical, mathematician, we all a bit the same. And he defined it as the unique service. He defined this methodological service as being the unique service of maximizing statistical quality given a fixed budget. So I really think that can be applied to anyone that's really working in the data domain in the government of Canada. So now I'll start the comparison exercise. So I'll take 5 of the 6 key leadership competencies and try to draw a comparison between each of these competencies and the various concepts of the scientific approach. And my goal here, as I mentioned, is really, if I was to present that to younger employees, to maybe have a way to communicate to them and to make them understand what is leadership and how they can actually be leader at any stage of their career. First, the first one of the key leadership competency is create vision and strategy. And I would like to compare that to the idea of defining the research question in the scientific approach perspective. So from the scientific approach perspective, the methods begins with identifying a research question or a problem, followed by formulating an hypothesis that guide investigations. And the hypothesis provides a clear focus for the research and ensures that the efforts are aligned towards a specific goal. So it's really about making the research question in concrete activities and to define specific success metrics. And if we take a look at the definition of create vision and strategy, while leaders are expected to develop a compelling vision that inspires others, but also to create strategies to achieve it. So also to have concrete activities in order to achieve that broader strategic vision that can be a bit blurry. So the vision needs to be grounded in reality based on data, trends, and challenges. So it's really about translating implementation strategies, objectives, and direction into concrete activities. And it requires to contribute expertise and insight to the development and implementation of organizational strategies. So if we take the comparison, I think it's quite clear that both of these aspects require clear goal-oriented thinking, and it's really about articulating a future step that drives strategic planning, but also defining concrete activities. So in both cases, it requires clarity and the ability to predict potential outcomes. So I think the comparison is quite fair here. Then the second key leadership competency is uphold integrity and respect. And I'm going to compare that to the ethical consideration in research that are truly important in the scientific approach. So from the scientific approach perspective, of course, ethical standards in research are paramount. We are, as scientists, expected to conduct experiments and handle data with transparency, honesty, and respect. And of course, misconduct and manipulation of data can lead to severe consequences, both professionally but also socially. So I'm sure you are familiar with the policy in terms of scientific integrity that we have at the Government of Canada level. We also have various frameworks to ensure that ethical considerations are taken into account. So for example, I'm thinking about the fair data principles. And at the end of the day, anyone that studies mathematics, statistics, or data science know about unbiased results and accuracy, right? From the leadership competency perspective, leaders are required to demonstrate ethical behavior, respect for others, fairness in decision-making. Integrity forms the foundation of trust within the organization, much like ethical rigor forms the backbone of credible scientific inquiry. And if we think about our new clerk of the Privy Council, one of the first actions he took when he started is really to launch a broad discussion on public service values and ethics in order to ensure the civil service. Actually, I think yesterday and 2 days ago, we had a virtual symposium on ethics and integrity that was hosted by the clerk of the Privy Council. So we know it's really important for a leader to demonstrate integrity and respect. The next key leadership competency that I want to talk about is collaboration. So collaborate with partners and stakeholders. And I think can be compared to the fact that we need peer review and collaboration also within the scientific context, right? So science thrives on collaboration. Peer review, co-authorship, and multidisciplinary projects are integral in refining ideas and validating research. So for example, when you submit to a scientific journal, you have to go through a peer review, right, in order to be published. And collaboration ensures also a diversity of thoughts and fosters innovation through shared expertise. And that's what I presented, when I talked about the enhanced scientific approach. It demonstrated the importance of collaboration in for the scientific community. And for the leadership competency, well, leaders need to work collaboratively with internal and external stakeholders, including with employees, other departments, and external partners. And effective collaboration allows for the exchange of ideas, aligns interests, and builds consensus, much like the collaborative process in the scientific community. So I think that it's quite clear that both leadership and science faces collaboration as a mechanism for achieving better results. Then we have the key leadership competency, which is promote innovation and guide change. And from the scientific approach perspective, the heart of the scientific inquiry is the search for new knowledge. Experimentation and discovery drive innovation, leading the advancement of understanding, technology of processes. And failures and unexpected results are often stones to break through. So they're not really failures, they're just a way to exclude a potential project, right? And from the leadership perspective, leaders are tasked with driving change and fostering a culture of innovation within their organization. And this competency involves encouraging new ideas, embracing experimentation, and adapting to shifting conditions. So we hear more and more the idea of having a growth mindset. And I think during the panels that we had for the past 2 days, it was quite clear that innovation was a bit, really important, especially in the data field. So both the scientific method and leadership require a willingness to innovate and to challenge the status quo. So once again, the comparison, I think, stands here. And finally, the last key leadership competency that I'm going to talk about is achieve results. And I think it's quite clear that with the scientific approach, the end of the process involves drawing conclusions based on the data collected and analyzed. And this conclusion contribute to a broader knowledge and are often applied to solve real-world problems. So the idea is really to achieve a very specific and concrete result here. And from the leadership competency perspective, leaders are ultimately judged by their ability to deliver on their vision and strategy. Achieving results means turning plans into action, meeting organizational goals, and driving tangible outcomes that benefit for the public service and the society at large. So both scientists and leaders are results-oriented, focusing on the practical application of their work. There's one last key leadership competency, which is mobilize people, but I didn't want to dig into it. It was harder for me to draw a very direct comparison between this competency and the notions in the scientific approach. And this is the last part of the presentation. I want to talk about the fact that leadership goes beyond executive roles. So leadership should be seen as a set of behavior and influence rather than a position of authority. And one does not need to be an executive in order to demonstrate leadership. I was actually in the regional office of Statistics Canada in Toronto 2 days ago with the Director General of the Modern Statistical Methods and Data Science branch, and we had a small, informal meet and greet with employees, and it was quite interesting because at some point someone asked, hey, but I'm still a junior. How can I demonstrate leadership competencies, right? And I truly believe that you don't need to be managing people. You don't need to be an executive in order to demonstrate leadership competencies. It's really more a set of behaviors that you can demonstrate on a daily basis. Because statistical leadership in the context of the data field, is really about making sure that what you're doing is the best you can to provide a service of excellence to your partners and therefore ultimately to the society, because we work for the public sector, right? So we work for the public good. And to less experienced employees, I would like just to say, that your role is really to optimize under many constraints. So those constraints are budget, timelines, ethical consideration, human resources, and you can, I'm sure, think of way more other constraints. So if we think about technical stuff here, we do know that when you try to optimize under many, many constraints, there's none one optimum. You have usually multiple mini optimum. So your goal is really to find a local optimum. It's not to find the best optimum under the constraint of, for example, maximizing accuracy or the methodological soundness of your approach. You really need to think of your work of an optimization exercise under many constraints that you might not be familiar with yet, but it will come with experience. Also, transparency is crucial. We work for the public good. So you have to be able to explain your approaches and methods. And knowing that they are the best one is not good enough. You really need to be able to explain them to partners that don't have the same technical background as you. And it doesn't mean that you are not the expert in the room. You probably are the expert in the room, even though you are a junior. You probably are the person that knows the project the best from the methodological and technical perspective. It just means when you try to communicate, it just means that you understand that you work for the society and that you need to be transparent. Also, one last advice is really that building a network is important to be supported as a scientist. So you are not an expert at everything, right? So knowing a broad variety of people with various backgrounds will help you make your projects better. And it was mentioned that I received an award in 2022 at the level of the Government of Canada. But in my opinion, it's not me that just won the award. It's because I knew many people in the organization. I knew someone that was an expert in optimization. I knew someone that was an expert in bootstrapping. It was mentioned this morning, the bootstrap, right? I don't know. I know. I'm a statistician. I know about this type of thing, but I'm not an expert. It's because I knew people that could help me that I was able to have more efficiency in my project and to have a more robust approach to the problem solving. To the more experienced people, I think it's important to realize that statistical leadership, from the perspective of less experienced employees, should be approached from a change management perspective. And that's something that I hear a bit, change management, in the past 2 days. I think it's really important. So statisticians are usually highly technical professionals, often more introvert or even neurodivergent, meaning that transitioning to a leadership role can feel a bit challenging and unfamiliar. Therefore, it's our mandate to accompany them and guide them through this transition, right? It's essential for success. We need to clearly explain the importance of statistical leadership for the organization, so it enhances process efficiency, it supports data-driven decision-making, and it contributes to fulfilling the overall mandate of the agency more effectively. But we also need to explain the gain that they have, right, on the individual basis. So it's equally important to highlight how embracing leadership benefits them personally. By developing leadership competencies, statisticians, data scientists can become better scientists, and it allows them to collaborate more effectively, to communicate their findings clearly, and to influence key decision makers. So about accompanying, statisticians and data scientists, I just want to provide a few words on how we decided a bit to do that at Statistics Canada, especially in the modern statistical methods and data science branch. We launched in 2022, is still ongoing, the Research and Leadership Acceleration Plan. So it's a plan that is part of our strategic vision that develops a few concrete activities and tools to help younger statisticians to develop their research, outreach, and leadership skills, but also it helps managers and supervisors to accompany their employees. So for example, we conducted a few branch seminars on practical aspects of research and technical outreach. We have a research and technical outreach mentoring program. We created a competition of less experienced employees on topics related to strategic vision to force them to think about stuff that are not just technical, right? And we created opportunities through those competitions to participate to international conferences. And we are also planning on developing workshops on statistical leaderships and the role of supervisors. So in terms of conclusion, leadership competencies are not separated, in my opinion, from technical skills, but are in fact aligned with the scientific approach. Just as statisticians use logic, critical thinking, and structured methods in their work, these same skills are essentials in terms of leading teams, solving problems, and making evidence-based decisions, so for leaders. Framing statistical leadership as a natural extension of their scientific expertise can help statisticians and data scientists to see the value in these skills. Leadership will not only enhance their technical impact, but also empower them to play a more strategic role in the organization's success. By supporting statisticians in developing leadership skills, we are not only investing in them, but we are also strengthening the organization's capacity to adapt, innovate, modernize, and achieve excellence. So this support needs to be concrete and led from above, and as it constitutes a change for less experienced employees with technical backgrounds. So thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.
I think we did. I think we have time for one question. Yeah.
Thought I had to do this without the mic. Sorry. So, one of your slides, you mentioned interagency collaboration. Does that also, I guess it applies to sharing data sets and insights. Does that also apply to some of this leadership mentoring and fostering the leadership? Is that applicable in that area as well? One of the slides that you had said, interagency collaboration. Just you could speak a little bit more about that.
So I'm not quite sure, to be honest, to understand your question. So what you're saying is that is leadership...
So there's StatsCan, then there's Alberta. The provinces also have their own statistics collection agencies. Mm-hmm. So just that viewpoint in terms of interagency collaboration?
Well, I think that when it comes to official statistics, my initial, reaction would be that, at the Canada level, Statistics Canada is, by law, the leader when it comes, to official statistics. But I think it's crucial to be able to collaborate with the various provinces in order to get, meaningful data that really applies to the constituents of each of the provinces, for sure. And interagencies, collaboration is crucial. When it comes to open data, Statistics Canada is one of the major contributors, right? So it means that, of course, as a statistical agency in Canada, collaboration is truly important. But not only in terms of data, in terms of expertise too, right? We have methodologists, we have very experienced people, very technical people, and we have a lot of years of experience, more than 100 years of experience when it comes to conducting, surveys or, data integration approaches. So Statistics Canada has been, very proactive when it comes to providing workshops, for example, to build capacity in terms of methods. And I think that more and more departments are trying to get, teams with that are very focused on data, right? So maybe Statistics Canada will have more of a governance role in the future, but at the end of the day, in terms of expertise, we are always, trying to provide expertise and to provide workshops, for example.
Thank you very much. That also correlates with the Congress that you had mentioned, the Statistics World Congress. Thank you. That makes sense.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Kenza.